We got this Kia Sorento, just got dropped off last night. At least I think it's a Sorento. Yeah, it is. Okay, so they said it sounds like a helicopter and it won't go over 40 miles per hour. So to me, I'm thinking restricted exhaust. I don't know. Start it right up. How many miles? It's got 124,000 on it, almost 125. Let's see what happens when we try to raise RPM. That definitely sounds weird. Okay. I want to go out for a test drive. Before we go for a test drive, let's check the exhaust. There's definitely exhaust coming out. Like, it's not completely plugged. If that's the problem, I'm just assuming, guys. I don't know if it has a restricted exhaust just yet. But right now I got my scanner going. We're doing a full system scan, even though I don't see a check engine light. Alright, so we do have a code here. It says history. P0336 crankshaft position sensor A circuit range performance. Now, can a bad crank sensor cause a car to not go over 40 miles per hour? I would say so. But let's go for our test drive. So when the owner was first telling me about this problem, this is a video they sent me, something similar to this. They were like, listen to the sound that the car is making. Listen. Okay, so you know, someone sent me a video like this through text, and you know, everything's compressed, it sounds like crap, and I told him, hey, without seeing the car I can't tell, but to me that sounds suspension related. And now that I'm in the car, yeah, it sounds like the front left strut, and I would even say stabilizer link, are worn out, like severely. And I know this, or I can only assume, because on this car maybe about a year ago I changed the front right strut and the front right stabilizer link because it literally like popped apart. That's how bad it was, that they couldn't even drive the car because the spring popped out. The I don't know what to call it, the shaft of the strut assembly just came right out. It was in pieces. So the front right side has a new stabilizer link, well, you know, new stabilizer link and a new strut assembly, but we never did anything with the front left side because there was no problem with it at that time. And now obviously the front left side is making a ton of noise, but that's not gonna be, well, you know what, it's really weird because let's actually drive the car, guys. It feels like it's accelerating just fine for the little 4-banger 2.4 liter this car has. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, it feels like it's pulling just fine. So keep in mind, the main noise that the car was making, that they said, oh, look what the car is doing, look what the noise the engine is making. It turns out that noise is actually just a front left suspension making that noise. And I have no idea why they told me it won't go over 40 miles per hour, because clearly that's not the case. Yeah, it accelerates just fine for a little 2.4 liter. You know, it doesn't have the V6 in it, so it doesn't have all of its or it doesn't have all the power of V6. But for 2.4, it drives just fine. And clearly, guys, look, I'm already at 50, okay? And I reached 50 miles per hour with no issue at all. So let's go back to the garage. Let's check out the suspension and see what's going on. I'm suspecting it's gonna be pretty bad, just like the front right side was. All right, guys, I went straight for the throat because I knew where to look, based off of, like I said, the same exact problem happened on the front right side. So I took this little rubber like cover off, right? And you can see the top hat is right there, right? And it has the 3 studs with the nuts on it, right? It's all supposed to be one piece. But if you grab the top hat right here, I could actually move this and I could actually spin it completely around. Look at this. It should not spin. Why? Because it's all one plate. It should be connected to these 3 studs right here. You should not be able to move this, especially rotate this. So what happened on the front right side was that it completely rotted away to the point where when I went to remove it, the plate with the 3 studs on it was bolted to the chassis of the car, yet the centerpiece of the top hat was still stuck to the shaft of the strut. So this is why the second you start to lift up the suspension, the whole strut is going to separate, because there's nothing holding it together anymore besides the weight of the vehicle. Basically, if I were to jack up this car right now, all of this is going to separate and you're probably not going to get it back together, guys. So you need to make sure you have the brand new part in hand before you even attempt to do anything on this. And this is why it sounds so bad while driving, because this metal plate inside of here is bouncing around and rubbing on everything as you driving around. So yeah, basically every time this thing hits a bump, this metal plate is coming up and smacking the shock tower, and when you turn your wheel, it's also rotating inside of here when it's not supposed to be. So I was this close to jacking it up, but then I was like, you know what, let me check the strut first, and sure enough, I made the right call. So it's gonna get the same parts like I did on the front right side. It's gonna be a complete strut assembly and 1 stabilizer link. It's just the way I like to do things. I don't like to reuse those old stabilizer links. And by the way, I did check the one on this one right now. Just put your hand inside of here and you know, grab onto the sway bar link, and yeah, you know, we're not gonna mess with this. So it's a few days later, we are back with this Kia, and as you can see, we got some new parts here. We have a front left stabilizer link, strut assembly. This is a Mondo unit, like I said, or maybe I mentioned it, but this is a OEM supplier for Hyundai and Kia. And then we have our new crank sensor from NTK. So this is our parts that we have to put on. I also have a set of rear brake pads because the rear pads are getting low, so they said just get it done while it's here. Let's go ahead and jack up the car. I want to go ahead and start with the strut and the stabilizer link. So I got the car on jack stands. It's safe to pull the wheels off. So I'm sure I got you guys a shot up there as the center of the strut kind of just fell through the body of the car. You know, that should stay stationary when you're jacking up a car. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with the stabilizer link itself. I'm only gonna disconnect the bottom half, the one that goes to the actual sway bar, because we're replacing everything. So there's no reason to disconnect it from the strut. We're just creating extra work for no reason. So it looks like all of this stuff is 17 mil. So I'm gonna use my thin profile wrench. You can see how that is thin compared to like a standard wrench. And the thin wrench allows you to get in here and hold the flat surfaces, so you could actually go ahead and spin that off. So I already broke it free and I sprayed it with some penetrating oil. So let's see if it cooperates all the way. Oh, my kneecap just popped. That hurt. Isn't it fun getting old? Guys, I'm 38 this year. I feel like I'm 60. Well, that went a lot easier than I was expecting. As you can see, it's disconnected now. So now we don't have to bother with removing the other end, like I said. So next up, I want to start removing the strut. We'll get the harness here for the ABS sensor out of the way. You can see this strut actually has a camber bolt on it because this little tab right here. I don't think this is factory, but it can change the angle of camber. So I'm gonna go ahead and just try to mark it. It doesn't really matter because we're replacing the strut. You know, creating a reference mark from here onto the strut is pointless at this point. We could try to align the tab with the bolt, I suppose, and just try to face it in the same direction when we're putting it back together, which you can see is pretty much facing downward. I need to get some hearing protection. I mean, I have some, I just need to put it on. Careful not to hit the wire. Before knocking this one out, let's go ahead and get out the top one. Don't worry, I was aware about hitting the end of this bolt to not damage the threads. I wasn't hitting it that hard. And yes, I do have my hearing protection installed. Let's see if this bottom one wants to come out. You know what? You have some leeway here because it's tapered at the end of the bolt. But if you smash it enough, you will end up damaging it. As you see, I can still thread on the nut, no problems at all. Let's go ahead and get the air hammer with the special socket and adapter to hit directly on the nut. So I know removing the strut seemed very uneventful, and I made it seem like it was a lot worse than it really is, but in fact it is that bad. So I decided to go ahead and put the strut assembly right here in my spring compressor. Let's go ahead and disassemble it, or yeah, I think we should to be safe. I just want to take the pressure of the spring off of the top hat so we can see how bad this really is. Alright, so the spring compressor is compressing the spring and it's holding all the tension, so the top head is free. Come on, look at this, guys. But I'm still gonna go ahead and disassemble this just so that we could get this hazard out of the way with the spring tension. You know, a horse is like a loaded gun. Oh, sorry. I've been watching a little bit too much Dr. Pro lately. But yeah, this is exactly what's going on here, why this car was making so much noise. So when I say it was this bad, it really is this bad, okay? I was not exaggerating. Yeah, so what's funny is like both sides rotted out just like this. Isn't that funny? That's crazy, guys. So now we can safely, actually first let's go ahead and check the strut. Yeah, the strut itself wasn't horrible, you know what I mean? But guys, these days it just makes more sense to change the whole strut assembly, you know, for the price that it costs, especially getting a good quality Mondo part. But now we could relieve the tension of the spring. and that's it. We no longer have a loaded horse. This thing's good to go, like the new chicken fajita from Taco Bell. Not a sponsor. There's no stress on the ABS sensor, no stress on the brake hose at all. The lower control arm is supporting everything. So yeah, the next thing is, let's go ahead and install the stabilizer link first down here, because it's a lot easier to do right now while everything is out of the way. Alright, so let me go ahead and finish torquing this down. If you're wondering how I was able to tighten a nut without holding the shaft, is sometimes these new parts, the joints are just stiff enough to hold the shaft while you put the nut on. Sometimes it ends up breaking free, and then you got to use another tool like a hex head inside of the shaft, you know, one of these, to prevent it from spinning. So sometimes you get lucky like this. Like I said, let me finish torquing these things down. And stabilizer links are very important that you torque them down properly, because if they are not fully torqued down, or if they become loose over time, they will create a rattling or clunking noise and become very annoying for the owner of the car. Guys, there's nothing wrong with reusing like nuts and bolts. I always prefer OEM stuff. They're just better quality. If the nut or bolt is in great condition, reuse it. Throw out that cheap Chinese pot metal nuts and bolts that deform very easily. It's not worth it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and leave all of these finger tight for now until we get everything torqued down. Now, before just slamming in this bolt, the one that was seized inside of here, back into the strut assembly, I'm going to take it over to the wire wheel and clean off all this corrosion, just so that it slides in a lot easier, and next time hopefully whoever comes in here won't have to deal with this garbage. Alright, so it looks a million times better, and I even went ahead and sprayed the shank of the bolt with CRC to protect it from corrosion. So let's go ahead and put this thing back together. Okay, for the camber bolts, I could see my marks. Using a gold marker probably wasn't the best option. But I could see them, and we know they were pretty much facing down. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this the same way, and I'll torque these down. So let me go ahead and get that done. All right, so the strut is all torqued down. I tried to get this thing back in the same exact spot where it used to be, but because of this camber bolt, it most likely has to go in for a wheel alignment. Let's go ahead and reconnect our ABS sensor back here. Okay, now we can install our new stabilizer link. And everything up here is all torqued down. Let's not forget about our little dust boot. Perfect. All right, we are just about done with this portion of the job. Yeah, everything's torqued down, everything looks good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and put the wheel back on it, and let's tackle that crank sensor. All right, so this is gonna be a pain in the butt to try to record this, and I really am crunched for time at this point. So I'm just gonna show you guys where the crank sensor is located, and then I'm just gonna go at it. So I did debate whether I want to put the car up on ramps or just leave it on the jack stands. It's debatable. I think I might get a hair, maybe like an inch or two more clearance if I put it up on the ramps, but I don't know if it's worth the extra effort. So anyways, behind here in the back of the engine, you can see the drive shaft, and there's going to be a plate. See this plate right here with like a 10mm bolt on it, and it has a harness going into it. So behind this plate right here is going to be the crank sensor. So I have to go ahead and remove this thing right here, and hopefully the sensor comes out with any issues. It's a real nightmare when the sensors get seized inside of the bore and it becomes a real nightmare trying to get them out. So fingers crossed. So it looks like I got really lucky. The sensor came out with very little prying, so it didn't take too long. The only thing holding it in is the connector up top, so I'm gonna have to come in from the top of the engine to unplug it. All right, so coming from the top of the car, if you look straight back down here, you could remove the air box if you want to. Who knows, I may end up having to do that. But you're gonna see there's 3 connectors, 1, 2, and 3. Now this third one, the one that's closer to the front of the vehicle, is gonna be the crank sensor. So I'm gonna start with removing the little retainer clip. You can see it has a metal clip right here. All right, so I was able to pull out the sensor from the top without removing the air box or anything after remove the retainer clip like I showed you guys before. So it would pretty much just come right off of here. You pull it out, and then the only thing holding on this sensor is like 2 prongs that come and they pinch on both sides of the sensor like this, and all you have to do is pry it up to bring it off of those prongs, just like that, guys. It's pretty simple. There's no bolts or anything, no other clips holding it in. I checked the old sensor compared to the new one. They are the same exact length and everything seems to match up. So let me go ahead and install a new one. So I have the sensor plugged in up top. Now we have to come back underneath the car. And one other thing to look out for is where the sensor mounts right here. If you have a bunch of corrosion, like it's called rust jacking, and it actually wants to lift the sensor away from the engine block, you have to clean that stuff off. This one doesn't look too bad, and of course try not to get anything into the hole because it will get into your engine oil. But if you have excessive corrosion right here, make sure you go ahead and clean that off before you put the new sensor in. I can't see, guys, I'm using my phone as my eyes, so kind of sucks doing it this way, but it works. Trying to go straight in without touching the walls. Got all kinds of crap hitting me in my face, going into my mouth. That's why I got glasses on. Make sure you're wearing glasses when you're underneath the vehicle like this. And guys, look how it just popped in very nicely. No excessive force, nothing. Just very slight wiggling, and it popped in and right where that O-ring is so it can seal. Came out very nice. And if you have to force the sensor in, like you can't get it to pop in where the O-ring is at, that means there's too much corrosion. Don't force it. You're going to break your new sensor. Just take it out and clean off that corrosion before you continue. Anyway, let me go ahead and put all this stuff back together, guys. There's one 10mm bolt holding the sensor in place, and then the 2 bolts that go right here for that heat shield. All right, so we are all done with the work we're doing. I torqued the lug nuts on the wheel, so that's all set. Hood is closed. Now the only thing I have to do is put the rear brake pads on this thing, but I'm not gonna put you guys through any of that because that's not really what the car was here for, and it's just something stupid easy I could go ahead and knock out. So yeah, no point in that being in the video. Anyway, I decided to go ahead and do a full system scan with my scanner. We're gonna see if there's any codes related to that crank sensor. I can't remember honestly, guys. So if there are, we're gonna go ahead and clear them out and start over fresh, and then we'll look at the RPM and make sure that the engine is picking up, or the new sensor is picking up the engine RPM. If it weren't, I would imagine this thing probably wouldn't start, but who knows? Sometimes they run off of the cam sensors and they'll still start. But you can see we do have a code here inside the ECM. All right, so there is a code here. Maybe it just slipped my mind. Anyway, so I don't know if I mentioned this before, but when I was talking to the owner, they did mention that while they were driving, like the RPMs would occasionally show like 0. Even though the car was moving, the RPMs were like dead, as if the engine were off. And that's when it wouldn't go over a certain speed, which makes sense. So let's go ahead and clear out these codes. Okay, so the only thing present is airbag codes. It won't let us delete that. That's not what we're here for, so that's fine. System selection, let's go into the ECM and let's look for RPM or crank signal PID. See if we could find anything like that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to start it, and we should see a RPM right there if the new sensor is working correctly. And yes, it picked it up just fine. It does seem to be reading correctly. We are idling at about 1500 RPM because of the cold start. So that's looking really good, guys. Let's go out for our test drive now and make sure all that clunking, rattling noise that we had up front is gone. All right, so I'm on that same street before where I let you guys listen to all that noise. is a perfect street for that because the road's kind of like uneven. And let me shut up now. Yeah, I'd say that's a confirmed fix. It is a night and day difference. Right up here, some more bumpy roads. And yeah, guys, there's no question about it. It sounds as good as a Kia Sorento can sound. Yeah, it's fixed. Okay, so that's good news. And our RPM seems to be reading perfectly. All right, so I'm gonna give it a good test drive, and once I get back from my test drive, I'll scan for codes and make sure we don't get another code related to the crank sensor. So I'm back from my test drive. Let's go ahead and check for codes, and nothing. Everything's great. All right, guys, so like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and knock out the rear brake pads real fast.